Wonderful. Well, so happy to see everyone here, and I'm so glad that Prof. Bernie has given us all the excellent definitions, because we're going to just dive into what does this transformational leadership look like at a personal level. And I'm so excited to have three just amazing gentlemen with me today who are just going to share from their personal perspectives, life histories, the good, bad, and the ugly, I hope, a little bit, right? Because we figured authenticity, just walking the talk, is going to be the key, and I'm sure that'll be much more interesting for a panel too, right? So I think what we'd like to do first, just to get up close and personal, is we've invited each of the panelists to actually do a little self-introduction with a little slideshow or little picture, combination of pictures. So could we have the first introduction picture up?
Hands up.
All right, that's Keith. Okay, you're up first, Keith.
Thanks, Melissa. Very good afternoon to everyone. I was asked to select 3 photos, but I, in the end, couldn't resist putting another, 2 of the family on there. So by way of introduction, I am an investment banker, which really means that I help large corporates, private enterprises, conglomerates, significant families, funds, either raise capital for their companies or sell them, or help them buy them. And professionally, I'm the chairman of Evercore in Asia. And Evercore is the world's largest independent investment bank, and we rank amongst the top 3 globally in terms of mergers and acquisitions advisory. I don't know where the slide's gone, but I also sit on the management committee, the global management committee of the firm. And so it is a privilege to be one of the 8 partners in Evercore to run the bank globally. I'm married to Dana, who's here with us. She's a doctor, and we have 3 children. They are 18, 16, and 13. And from the photo, you can see that if we can put the slide up again.
Can we put the slides back up so we can see the pictures of the...
Yeah, can you put the slides?
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's so top left is really the family photo. My wife, kids, and then my parents. It's been a very traumatic year for us on the family front because in March this year, we lost our father, Richard Magnus, and we're still making adjustments to that, helping Mum along, and trying to move forward so that we can live, the life and the legacy that he would have wanted us to live. The other couple of photos are really reflective of what family life is like. I have a very close relationship with my children. Family is close-knit, and we have lots of fun. I think, in that photo, we must have been laughing at a joke that, either my son or my daughter was telling, and my father actually took that shot, there, and of course, some travels and so on and so forth. And then really the final photo is my role in the community. One of them is the chairman of Center for Fathering, Dads for Life, which Richard used to chair and handed over the chairmanship to me. I also am the chairman of Alpha in Singapore. That is, an evangelical, sort of a program that we run, and I serve on the board of the ACS Foundation as well. I also serve on the board of Sport SG, and earlier this year I was chief negotiator for Singapore on the take back of the sports hub from the private sector. I'm also on the board of the Tech for Good Institute, which was formed and set up by Grab Inc., which is a non-profit and promotes, why it's good to have tech in the economy. So let me pause there and perhaps hand it over to...
Absolutely. Let's do some quick round of introductions. I know we have 25 minutes left, but it's okay. Sam, would you like to introduce yourself then? Yeah, let's get the slide up for Sam, please.
To the slide. Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right. Lovely family. Good afternoon. I'm Sam. Such a pleasure to be here. I'm a Singaporean, and I come from a very humble and traditional family. And you can actually see that's my dad, my mom, my younger brother, and myself. My dad ran his own small business, and my mom pretty much split her time between looking after the kids, which is really a handful, and helping my dad with his business. They live in an era where it's not that easy for them to get education. So actually both of them did not complete their primary school education, and they had to come out to work. In fact, my dad, I always tell my son and daughter that my dad started working when he was 9 years old, right? Those were the time. And I've been very blessed because by virtue of their hard work, I can study. I don't have to worry about financial needs. And that really forms the core of me. I think, if you cut me up, I still bleed heartland, which is, something that probably Singaporeans understand better. But I think that's at my core. But really thankful for what my parents have done to give me the opportunity. I met my wife, Celine, who is here today, sitting next to Junie. Both of us met when we joined a University Christian Fellowship mission team. She had the unfortunate situation where I was the team leader and she was a team member, and she has nowhere to go. So she was cornered for a year under the pretext of training for a mission trip. I was building my relationship with her. As they say, the rest is history. And here we are today together. We actually would have celebrated in a big way our 20th wedding anniversary in May. But exactly. I look much younger. She looks even younger. But the reality is that we married for 20 years. And in a few days' time, we probably would celebrate us meeting up for, I think, 24 years, maybe, on my birthday, thereabout. Yeah, we have a pair of twins. I think the slides looks much better than me. You can put on the slide if you don't mind.
All these humble
Yeah,
guys.
thank you so much. Thank you so much. Sorry, this is Isaac and Estelle. I think this introduction is so that you give a view into us as a person versus a title, position, or background. And this is Isaac and Estelle. And this photo was taken they were born in Thailand, right? And we took this when we were based out of Beijing, which Gregory would have visited many times as a visiting professor. That was the day where I organized a surprise party for my wife. Anyway, fast forward, in early 2020, I came back to Singapore after about a decade overseas, working in multinational in various locations, to join Yoast, which is a household name. It's a regional food and beverage company. Very blessed. And this last photo is basically taken a few weeks back when I dragged my leadership team and I to climb Mount Kota Kinabalu. Yeah, exactly. Beautiful place. Well done, guys and girls. Right? They made it possible for me to return in one piece. So thank you. Always go with a good team. So really thankful for that. And I think, my team is a big part of my life, and I'm very thankful that they are here today, and we'll share a bit more later on. Yeah. All right? Thank you.
Yay, team.
Over to you.
Okay, Richard, next slide, please.
Oh, thank you. That's me. I do need the slides too. I didn't know which I've supplied. All right. So the first one, I'm pleased to start with the one in the middle. Those are my 3 girlfriends. No, I'm kidding. They are my 3 daughters. As some of you have heard earlier, I've been married for 36 years before the Lord calls my wife home. And I had the privilege of knowing her since she was like 17 years old, so we know each other for a long time. She used to say, I know you more and I live with you more than I live with my mother, you know. And it is a privilege to know her, a woman of God. And I think she, of all of us who are Bible-believing Christian here, would understand when I say she epitomizes Proverbs 31, the woman in Proverbs 31. So I'm blessed to have that. And she left me with 3 wonderful adult girls. The eldest in yellow is Elizabeth. She's 34, and she's married to a Canadian husband, and they live in Melbourne. The number 2 is on the left of me, Ethel. Ethel is a chef, and she lives in Austria on the ski slope of Austria Lake. If those of you who are skiers here, and she's a chef there, and she and the husband, her Italian-German husband, helm a restaurant in Lake. If you want to go, let me know, because they have a full house most of the time. And the youngest one is Eve, the one on my right, and she is the youngest who just got married. She's 30, and she says, one day she told me, she said, Dad, you'll be very proud of me. And I said, why? I'm always very proud of you. He says, because my boyfriend then is a Singaporean Chinese. So I say, of course, I love my son-in-law. They are outstanding gentlemen. And one of the things that, you know, I'm proud of them is that they have learned to choose wisely. One of the most difficult things a young man and woman have to learn is to choose their life partner. And that can give them a life of blessings or a life of suffering, you know. And both end with ing. With it. So I had a chance to celebrate my 65th birthday in January this year. Yeah. So that was the picture that was taken, and that was taken by my partner, Francis, there on the left, Francis Yan there. And hopefully the Lord has brought a wonderful woman of God into my life, and we will have the next 30 years together, you know, sailing this journey with it. So that was a beautiful picture. So this year I've retired. And I spell retired as Retyrred. So it's new tracking, and the Lord will lead me to a different direction in my life. So my mission this year is to make an impact and influence for the Lord without an office or a title. So in time to come, you just see my name and no title behind it. And all I wish is the picture on the last that you see there is that I'm a born servant of Jesus. Right now, I'm the chairman of Crew Asia, and privileged to have my vice chairman, Reverend Dr. Chan Chong Hyuk, with me, and the former national director, Kok Hyang, with me as well, on my left, and also the current national director, Hok Chai, with us as well. So the board is here as well, so I'm pleased to serve. But my mission in life is to select things to do that have eternal perspective, not just on earth with it. So hopefully, with God's blessing, I can still make impact for Him. And the last picture, as you see there, is me looking up. It was taken on a magazine, but I thought that was the best angle they took for me, you know. But it was more a picture of me. If you can show that picture again, looking upward. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
And
Thank
that looking
so
upward
much.
means this. It is to look towards the future version of myself. I think I've never been perfected, and so I aspire to be a better husband, a better man, and better father, even though my kids are in their 30s. But most of all, I look towards it with the lasting vision of looking at Jesus and the last day and hearing the word, well done, good and faithful servant. So that's my aspiration. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to just pause for a moment and just notice that actually when we talk about transformational leadership, it's not just all those titles and things that we hang on ourselves, right? It is the fullness and the totality of who we are, right? With the grief that we've experienced, with the joys that we've experienced, with the quietness of those humble moments, and those learning moments, as well as sort of the triumphs and the joys, right? And I think to embody that those qualities is really what speaks so much more, really, than anything else. So thank you for just offering those introductions for a start. So we don't have a huge amount of time, but I did think that we should start with the context of the pandemic and what we have learned through that. You know, many people have said that the pandemic is this time that we kind of ripped open, you know, the lid on so many issues in society, so many structural issues that were there. People who didn't have to bump into each other were now living in very close quarters. Things that you really maybe didn't want to see, you can now not unsee, you know, and that's not just in the family, but even in society with isolation, with people who've been living in very marginal or on the edge kind of situations too. People's private struggles, you know, became so much more visible in some ways because of our close proximity, and instead of just being so busy doing all these kinds of things, you know, here we are now with all of this time, and what do we do? But of course, that's an opportunity for us too, right? And so I'd like to ask just our panelists too, you know, what for you has been the key takeaways? And maybe we just try and limit it to kind of one key point, and we get diversity of views here too, that you've taken out of the pandemic that you feel has been that greatest learning point for you. I'd like to, maybe Richard, you want to kick us off?
Okay, I'll do it. I think all of us do work, and I noticed in the pandemic, the whole work-life style has changed. We are compelled to work from home, and now people are going back, and they have used to a certain lifestyle and work. There's going to be a struggle within the corporate world with it. So the thought was, in the past, we all want work-life balance, and anything that's in the balance is itself intrinsically impossible to fulfill. It's stressful on both sides. And of course, certain quarters have said, let's have work-life harmony, and which is an improvement, but harmony means compromise. You have to give in each way, you know. So in the short term, it's sustainable, but in the long term, it's not. So I like to think that going forward, we should have work-life autonomy. The reason is because we all have to take control of our accountability. Both bosses have to take accountability for their company, but individual, we have to take accountability for our action in the work. And the workforce is going to change. A lot of our jobs will be replaced by bots, you know. And therefore, if we don't change with it, we'll be out of a job. So I hope this pandemic has caused us to realize that if we want really the kind of life that we can balance our family as well as our work, then have autonomy to take charge and be responsible.
Yeah, because what you end up doing and the choices that you make even in your family are the ones that also influence how we operate in community too. Absolutely. Keith, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Clearly, the pandemic has been, has caused, massive upheaval, across various, of course, the economy, borders became a lot less porous between countries. But of course, circuit breaker was really for me a circuit reset, for my family, and we can talk about that a little bit more. But since this panel is on the community as well, yeah. I thought I might sort of share, what was very apparent coming out of the pandemic, and I think I'll just make 2 points here. The first is that it is so important to have, as a nation, social resilience.
And what does that mean?
It means the ability to respond to change and to respond to crisis. And social resilience, I believe, starts at the individual household level, the individual family. And working together gives us national solidarity. and then the ability to cope with the crisis and to adapt to circumstances which are changing all the time. We saw changes in schools, we saw changes in the workplace, we saw changes in the economy, we saw jobs being displaced. And as the government tried to help, I think going forward, non-governmental organizations and civic organizations like the ones that we lead can help do numerous things to aid, equip, debunk fears, convey truths, convey facts, and resilience in the home multiplied across the nation is national resilience. So I think there's so much that we can do to prepare for the next crisis, which could come sooner than we think. And the second point I would make is that Singapore and the communities that we're in have to learn how to rally to help each other. And that really I define as social cohesiveness. And the social cohesiveness that we want to see as a national objective has to start with the individual family. Because if you don't have cohesiveness within the individual family, it is impossible for that family to be giving, or any person in this unstable family to be giving back to the community. And the pandemic did bring out significant amount of closeness in some cases, as people were locked down, but it also brought a lot of tensions to the fore. Yeah. Marriages were put under test. Parent-child relationships were put under the test. And so at the Center for Fathering, and I think the CEO is here, I chaired the CFF, pivoted online to make sure that we were equipping fathers and not losing our touch with how fathers should, sort of work to strengthen their families. At Alpha, we found that people were worried about mortality, COVID-19.
Absolutely.
So we pivoted online, ran our courses, ran our marriage courses, ran our parenting courses with record sign-ups during that period. Yeah. And I'll just make one final point here. It is impossible for the government, although it desires to have strong families in Singapore, it is impossible for the government to legislate that you should have a strong family.
Yeah, of course.
Because you just can't legislate and enforce. Yeah. What does it take to be a good father? What does it take to be a good mother? And it is civic organizations and non-governmental organizations in the community, like Family First, like Center for Fathering, that promote and need to be the ones equipping, setting the standards for the community to succeed. And I think that's a very, very critical role of civic organizations.
Yeah. And certainly even as leaders, being able to discuss these difficult issues, whether we mentioned, grief, but actually even abuse. I got called one day actually during circuit breaker actually too, by one of my staff who was in an ambulance, on the way to the hospital because she got hit. And then the first thing she said to me, she's like, "It's not his fault." And there's just so much stress and strain, I think, that happened during that time, people spending so much time online, whether it's gaming addictions or other kinds of, online harms and things like that. Suicides went up in the last year. I mean, especially even amongst youth. I mean, we had so many challenges that we just all saw. And actually, when we talk about transformational leadership, it's just, you're right, the government can't legislate on any of these things. It's kind of up to us, right? As members of society, as friends to one another, as neighbors, as peer supporters, actually, as leaders of organizations, to be setting the right tone and expectation around that. So, Sam, maybe just share a few thoughts
Melissa,
on that.
yeah, thanks. Thank you so much. I really want to bring this to a more personal level. We are all, in some ways, dads, moms, uncles, aunties. So, for me, the pandemic actually was a great moment in the sense that it taught me to reset my priorities. I think at the end of the day, when we talk about transformation leadership, it's linked to priorities. What do you devote yourself to pursuing? And for me, the learning is that I need to reset my priorities to focus family first. And my wife is here because, it's a confession time. But, I speak as someone who is working real hard in this area. But I just want to share what I went through and what I think at the end of the day, coming out from this pandemic, what we can probably do. And I just want to plant this thought, right? All of us know the truth, which is family is important. So this is a truth that we know. So we're informed by this truth. But how many of us are transformed by this truth? How do we live by this truth? And I think this pandemic forced me to get into that mode. Look, I was traveling. My wife and I and my kids. We moved 6 times in the last 11 years, 6 different cities. It took a toll on all of them. And this pandemic really allowed me just to anchor in Singapore and not travel. And I found I have more time with my kids. Not that I'm doing less work, but just that I have more time for my kids just because physically I'm around. And I realized that, wow, I'm missing out so much, right? Now when I travel, my kids will say, Dad, where are you going? In the past, they wouldn't ask, right? It's like, he's going again, right? And now that I say, I'm just going to Malaysia. No lah, why don't you stay, So it warms my heart, but it also reminds me that, going forward, when I plan my calendar, I have to put in the family time. So I don't do it very well, but I build into my calendar time with my wife, time with my daughter, time with my son. And you know what? The thing is that in the beginning, you ask them, hey, date is coming up, Estelle, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? No idea, because I'm not spending enough time with them, right? So anyway, bottom line is that I'm someone who's still working hard in this area. My encouragement to all of us, I think today one of the key emphasis I want to say is that there's business, there's our career, but family is first and foremost the most important, and we need to reset our priorities to pursue that. And let's help one another in this journey. Thank you.
Yeah, so good. I mean, no joy in being a public success and a private failure. So I can't read it, but yeah, got it. 8 minutes. Okay, there we go. So I'd like to stay on this personal note actually, because I think this is, lessons are hard earned, in many ways too. And I think we have the privilege today of listening to 3 fathers, husbands. And so I'd like to really just ask this question too, as a father, as a husband, what are the greatest challenges, temptations, derailment factors, that are sort of always there, and what do you do to keep on track?
I'm the oldest father.
Thought I'd take
I
the
start first,
opportunity, right?
We love this pregnant pause, right? It means she's asking a tough question. So I'll start because I have 30 over years of fatherhood status. So hopefully I've learned something in my life. Susan used to ask me that question many years ago when she interviewed me. She says, Richard, share with us your fathering journey. And my daughters were, at that time, up to 30 years old. So I says, well, if I can remember, the first 10 years, I was a teacher to them. Because when I teach, they will listen. And when they were in their teens, I became a coach. Because now I got to observe their strengths, their weaknesses, and fine-tune for them. Because I can't teach them as much now. They won't listen. But I can be the cheerleader for them. But to be a cheerleader and a coach, I must be a good teacher in the past. Because they will listen to me. And then now they're in their 20s, I become a mentor. So they say, oh, what does a mentor means? Does it mean minister mentor, I say, I'm sorry. That was not the example I was thinking of. Mentoring for me as a father in your kids in their 20s and 30s means unless you're asked, you keep your mouth shut. So I've learned that. So for those of us who have younger kids, they are below 10, take the opportunity to teach them. And that's tough for you because you're the busiest period of your time and your career demand that. And then when in the teens, coach them. They become equals with you, be their cheerleader, In their 20s, if you've done it right in the first 20 years, then you should set them free and they wouldn't go too far away. But if you did fail and didn't do too well in the first 20 years of teaching and coaching, it's all right. Do the third part, keep your mouth shut. Because if you have the relationship,
Practical advice.
they will come back to you. And then when they come back to you, then you teach and then you coach them.
Love it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Others?
Well, I've got, I think, 4 and maybe 5 principles of fatherhood, and that's really to love, teach, protect, and then make memories. It's a making memories part that really it allows a relationship to develop. And as I look back on my own childhood, it was the simple holidays to Fraser's Hill and so on and so forth that you remember, although we're very well traveled. But it was those times. So I encourage fathers to take time to have fun and make memories. The other thing that I would share, quite frankly, is that when your child comes to you with a problem, you must intervene. Because if you don't intervene, that child is going to come to you again with another problem, and if you don't intervene, that child is going to ask for advice elsewhere. And that's how children sort of fall into bad company. They feel part of something else, and so on and so forth. So very important to love, and when they have a problem, intervene, but don't do it obtrusively. Do it unobtrusively. It might just be a prayer with them. It might be advice. If they're being bullied in school, you have to look into it. And don't just say, oh, it'll get better. It'll get better. Because if the help doesn't come from dad and mom, they're going to go for help elsewhere.
Okay. Anybody want to talk about derailment factors and what they do to mitigate those, though?
Yeah.
Sorry, Sam, you're the last
no,
guy.
No worries. I can take that. I can take that. Before I take that, I just want to say one thing, because these 2 gentlemen has been through a lot, in the sense that their own journey, right? I just want to share my experience, because maybe some of you can relate to me. I have an absent dad, pretty much, right? And I really don't have a role model, actually, and it's really tough. So sometimes wisdoms like this, I really benefit a lot. That's one. Second of all, get into the company of good men and women, right? Because don't journey along, because no one has all the answers. There'll be times where you feel down. You need someone to pull you up. So don't journey along. So that's my second thing I'll share. Back to the derailment, very conscious about it. I think back to your original question, derailment of a leader, what do we need to kind of keep a lookout for? I think the reality is that as leaders, and we are all leaders here, as you move higher up, you have more autonomy, more power, and all, and there's a need for self-check and balance, right? What I mean by that, meaning to say that you have to make pre-decision, right? Pre-decision means you need to first define who you are, what are the values that's important to you, and when those temptations or those issues come up, you know what to do. You have the clarity of mind to say, you know what, I stand for integrity, so I'm going to choose this path. Then the next thing is courage. You have the clarity and you have the courage. You have the courage to do the right thing. So for me, that pre-decision is very important, and it has to go deep inside. Second of all, back to my first point, don't do it alone. We can't do it alone, right? I mean, this is not an advocate for support group, but the reality is that we have a lot of commonalities, right? I mean, what Richard shared, I'm sure some of you laugh at it. I'm taking down notes, right? Because eventually I'm going to keep my mouth shut when my kids grow up. I have no experience that at all, right? So don't do it alone. Share, get into groups, help one another. So, yep.
No, that makes so much sense, right? We think of accountability and we think of support, right? Last few seconds, actually, I'd love to just ask the question, because you are all community leaders, you are leaders in your families. Likewise here, we have so many community leaders, we all have families. What is your final call to action? I mean, if there was one thing to say, to people who are here, what would you say is your final call to action?
Well, give it a shot. I think one life at a time. I think you can make a difference one life at a time. Operate with dignity, to give people dignity. Operate with empathy and compassion. Very often the needs in our community that are the biggest needs are the ones that are not visible. So go seek them out. It's the voice that doesn't know that there's help available or there's even a need that needs the help the most.
Thank you.
So,
I just want to add that we know leadership in company, businesses, organizations is important. It's very important in family. Very important in family. The dads and moms have the responsibility to lead the family. We cannot leave it to chances. We have to lead. Intentional leadership in the family is very important. If you want the outcome, you want to steer the family towards a certain direction, you have to start leading responsibly and intentionally. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. My sister has an interesting principle, and she says, "We will do whatever leads to unity." As a principle. Yeah. Richard, final thoughts.
Okay, thank you. I think I can be sitting here and telling you things that is interesting, but you don't know me. You haven't seen my life. I haven't seen my life behind the scene. And my children do. Only two. My children and your spouse and God will see the authentic life. And if you do it right with your children and your spouse, then you have a little privilege that I had, which is my daughter at 30 start dating me. And so I think I'm okay. Not too bad with that. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And may we all be successful both privately and publicly. Thank you.